Hello and welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll talk about Chinese consumer tech space. One of the key bits of news coming out of China in recent weeks is the government's tough stance on their tech sector companies. One of the first high-profile companies to be severely impacted was Ant Financial and its founder Jack Ma. Ant Financial had to roll back its IPO plans, one of the biggest in history. And Jack Ma had to disappear from public view. He is still not in the news as much as he used to be, and it has been months since the Ant Financial non-IPO. More recently, Didi, the ride-hailing company's IPO was affected. Even though they were able to go ahead with their plans, it was those who invested in the share offering were left holding the bag. The latest is the education tech sector. Under Chinese laws, it is between complicated and forbidden for foreigners to own certain Chinese tech companies. This may be a problem for those companies if they want to raise money. But people have found a way around it. Sort of. Here's Bloomberg's Matt Levine writing about the workaround. With Chinese companies, this sort of thing is generally called a variable interest entity. You set up a company in the Cayman Islands that can be owned by anyone. The Cayman's company enters into a series of contracts with the local Chinese company, giving it, not ownership, but certain carefully curated economic interests and control rights over the Chinese company. Then you list the Cayman's company in the US, and people buy its stock, and they sort of pretend that they're buying stock in the Chinese company. They sort of pretend that the Chinese company is a subsidiary of the Cayman's holding company, even though really they're only buying an empty shell that has certain contractual relationships with the Chinese company. Clearly, this is a loophole and the Chinese government is on it. Here's Bloomberg talking about recent developments on this front. Regulators in Beijing are planning rule changes that would allow them to block a Chinese company from listing overseas, even if the unit selling shares is incorporated outside China, closing a loophole long used by the country's technology giants, according to people familiar with the matter. Once amended, the rules would require firms structured using the so-called variable interest entity model to seek approval before going public in Hong Kong or the US, the people said. It goes on to say, pioneered by Sina Corp and its investment bankers during a 2000 initial public offering, the VI framework has never been formally endorsed by Beijing. It has nevertheless enabled Chinese companies to sidestep restrictions on foreign investment in sensitive sectors including the internet industry. Getting approval for listing doesn't sound so bad, to be honest. However, what would be really bad news if those which are already listed on the foreign stock exchanges avoided? Anyway, this happened. China unveiled a sweeping overhaul of its $100 billion education tech sector, banning companies that teach the school curriculum from making profits, raising capital or going public. Banning companies from making profits is a clear red flag and very bad news for the already listed companies like TAL Education Group, New Oriental Education and Technology Group and Gaotu TechEdu Inc. Here's Noah Smith, opining on the Chinese government's recent moves. After the Cold War, our priorities shifted from survival to enjoyment. Technologies like Facebook and Amazon.com, which are fundamentally about leisure and consumption, went from being fun and profitable spin-offs of defense efforts to the center of what Americans thought of as tech. But China never really shifted out of survival mode. Yes, China's leaders embraced economic growth, but that growth has always been toward the telos of comprehensive national power. China's young people may be increasingly ready to cash out and have some fun, but the leadership is just not there yet. They've got bigger fish to fry. They have to avenge the century of humiliation and claim China's rightful place in the sun. And so when China's leaders look at what kind of technologies they want the country's engineers and entrepreneurs to be spending their effort on, they probably don't want them spending that effort on stuff that's just for fun and convenience. They probably took a look at their consumer internet sector and decided that the link between that sector and geopolitical power had simply become too tenuous to keep throwing capital and high-skilled labor at it. And so, in classic CCP fashion, it was time to smash. That's it for this video. Please give a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you.